Inmendham video. So we're going to do the Joe Rogan experience thing. Okay. And he's talking to some guy, whatever, Jordan, whatever. Just noticing this third eye thing. I think I did click a link on the real video because there was some video with some 8-year-old girl that has a third eye. What they really have is the fake blindfold. And she's just a little happy kid, but she's just a preposterous liar. And you're just thinking about, the definition of child abuse. When you get a kid to lie, that should be defined as child abuse. When adults manipulate children to be liars, that's really gross. But yeah, 6 million views for, just a completely fake, carnival bullshit. Anyway, but this doesn't bother, that kind of thing doesn't bother these people. They're worried about the transies in this, their agenda. That's what scares them. Anyway, yeah, let's play. A little spinny thing, good. Fine.
All right, we're live.
Enough of that.
Sir, first of all, thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed your YouTube video. I wouldn't say I've enjoyed. I have enjoyed them, but I've been puzzled by them. Been puzzled by the subject, and for people who have no idea what's going on,
yeah, whatever. He's been puzzled. So now he's going to do Canadian jokes, and I don't know what this Elvis, what's his face, Hendrix thing is, but I guess everybody has to have their, they have to put stickers on themselves because yes, their reality isn't too good. Also notice the guy's got he's got this line in the top, right between his brow there. It's going the wrong way, Really, you should have this, and then you have 2 lines. But he's only got 1 line. I think that's a sign of the devil or fucktard. I think it's the fucktard sign.
Sort of unpack this for them. In Canada is very different than the United States. I love Canada. I'm a giant fan of Canada. There's one place I would live.
Oh yeah, so everybody needs this whole history of Canada thing. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's so important where people are from, especially now with the internet and everything. It's just so irrelevant.
Out of the U.S., 100% would be Canada. I love it up there. I think the people are at least 20% more polite than America.
Yeah, well, you think a lot of shitty stuff anyway. I mean, it's just a silly thing to think. More polite. What does that even mean? Silly talk.
But you've got some weird shit going on up there, and your king, what do you call him? Prime Minister Trudeau, that fella, the Castro lover. The Castro lover. I was going to say that.
All right, Castro. So I don't, of all the people they hate in the world, all the despots, all the people that have ever run a country. I mean, Castro really isn't that high on the list in the sense that, he didn't build mansions for himself, didn't create a privileged class and all that kind of stuff. And he had real enemies in the sense that we were trying to kill him for 50 years. And we couldn't do it. He took on the United States of America in a little tiny country, and we denied him all kinds of income by saying we're not going to let you make money on tourism, you can't sell your cigars, you can't do this, you can't do that. We embargoed him essentially, and even in that, deprived state, he still survived. So who are you comparing him to, jackass? Truman, who dropped nuclear bombs on frickin', civilians in Japan? Bushes, who, slaughtered people? All kinds of crazy slaughters. While they're retreating from a country, they killed them. I mean, and then just add up all the babies they killed in Iraq. That's okay, though. That's for good.
Yeah, this fucking guy, and people have been posting today all the atrocities that Castro committed during his regime.
Yes, all the list of all the, and then you're going to bring up some of the wackiest crap ever. So it's like somebody talking about the Holocaust and they start talking about lampshades or something. And you're just saying, well, what shouldn't you just pay attention to the important stuff, not the silly stuff?
Show how
what's a few thousand firing squad deaths?
A few thousand. How about all the different people?
Yeah. Well, compared to what? Again, how many people have we daisy cuttered? How many children have we killed in our carpet bombings and our whatever you call those things, cruise missiles? How many women and children who didn't have anything to do with anything except to have a husband who was a little wacky? How many of them did we kill?
They executed and then sold their blood to the Viet Cong.
Yes,
Did you see that?
Right. Oh, that's so important to have some kind of silly. Yes, they made soap out of them. They did. I mean, if you're going to bother having firing squads and killing people, well, you might as well do something with the dead bodies, right? So that's just being more. That's more efficiency in my book. I give people points for that. You know, if you actually do something with the people you killed, well, yeah, it's good. Make buildings out of them, do something. Just don't throw them in a ditch.
Wonderful,
Yes,
wonderful
lovely.
man.
$50 a pint.
Yeah, he was a wonderful man.
Yes, compared to who, jackass? Oh, compared to Donald Trump? Oh, yeah, an inheritance king.
Fucking savage.
Right, compared to who again? Compared to who, you crazy person?
Trudeau, and what he represents is, I think, the good side of it, what he's trying to do, they're trying to make a kinder, more progressive, more inclusive country.
Right, but you don't like any of that shit, so why are you saying he's trying to do something you don't like? Go figure, retard.
But along the way, what they're doing is they're promoting what you would call online social justice warrior values. And some
Right, social justice warrior. Now, I don't even know why you want to label people something good and then call them bad. That's really dumb. So if you want to label them something fitting to what they are, you don't call them social justice warrior. That's like calling Castro a social justice warrior. Would you want to do that? You hate Castro, but you're going to call him something good. Does that make any fucking sense at all? So why don't you come up with a different term for the people you're afraid of? Like use Rush Limbaugh's kind of rhetoric. Call them potatoes or something. Feminazis. Yeah. Take a lesson from your heroes. Do it right. Don't do it stupid. Social justice is a good thing, idiot.
of them are a little preposterous. You are one of the very...
So, some of them are a little preposterous, and therefore, let's just throw out the whole idea. Oh, yeah. So, so insightful.
very few academics who have fought against some of these ideas that are not just being promoted, but are being enforced. And enforced and written into law. And one of them is about gender pronouns. What we mean by gender pronouns is not just he and she, but a whole...
Yes, right, because those are the traditional ones. So it's not about those. It's about the new ones where people are saying, I don't want to be one of those. And we can't have that. You're not allowed to say, I don't like being a he or a she. I really just don't want to play that. I want to play, whatever. I'm a little gooey about it. I'm sometimes a lesbian, and then sometimes I'm, Schwarzenegger or something.
Slew of invented gender pronouns that you're going to be compelled to use.
Yeah, they're already compelled to use, and likely in the States too, even though people don't know it yet. Certainly in New York, and the...
Certainly in New York. So, I don't know. I mean, do they have videotape of all this gender pronouncing stuff being imposed, the shackles people have been putting on? Because, I think it just really has to do with, hey, you're obligated. If somebody says, look, I'm not a Mr. or Mrs., I'm a in-betweenie, or I'm a something other, then you write it down on the contract, okay? If you're going to do this Mr. or Mrs. thing, I don't want to be a Mrs. especially. I mean, women should really be a little bit, no, I'm not a possession of somebody. No, thank you. I really don't want to play that game anymore. Fuck that.
Employment, EEOC, has already ruled on that with regards to businesses for the U.S. And
Yeah, businesses and I believe also landlords. I think, so if your landlord chooses to misgender you, and not just misgender you, like if you're a transgender woman, you used to be a man, now you're a woman, and they call you a he, it's not just that. Like, you're...
Yeah, it's not even so much about what you call them, it's what you have in the writing on the forms where you bother with this Mr. or Mrs. thing. So why don't you just cross out the Mr. or Mrs. thing, and then you don't have to worry about it at all. Yeah, wouldn't that be the smart thing to do? Just say, fuck that bullshit, old archaic nonsense from a traditional day when the men used to own the women's, and it was important that you knew who was who because you only wanted to talk to Mr. something because Mrs. something was a nut. She was a silly person. You didn't bother talking to her, the man of the house. Fuck that shit. Fuck you.
How to use, how many, what is the number of them now?
well, there's no standard nomenclature for the non-gender or for the non-binary types. There's many.
Right, so you talk about the law and then you just forget about the law and now talk about what people are talking about. So this doesn't have anything to do with the law, by the way. So the law just says, look, if they're transgender, they have a right to be identified as transgender if they choose to do so, and you have an obligation to respect that. Oh my God, horrors.
Invented words, And which of those you're supposed to use is dependent entirely on the subjective choice of the person that you're talking with.
Now, most people, I believe, out there listening are going, what the hell are they talking about right now? We're talking about...
Yeah, you're talking about nothing. That's what you're talking about. You're talking about some vague little boogeyman that's sitting out there saying, oh, they're going to do this, and they're going to do that, and they're going to do all this stuff. And all that stuff doesn't really happen in the real world, does it? No. So, this is all sort of bullshit. No, it's entirely bullshit. Well, it's not entirely bullshit, but it's close to entirely bullshit. And like I said, there's not all these other shit happening in the world right now. You know, we're not going to just double the military budget and cut taxes on the richest people in the world, and all that shit's not important, but oh yeah, this is.
As many as 70 plus invented gender pronouns like Z, XE, Zer, HIR, a bunch of weird ones.
Yes, Ms. Woo! They might even put that on a magazine someday. Ho, horror, horror. Let's all run away and hide under the whatever. The pussy cushion.
And this is for people that don't necessarily think they're a he or a she. So they prefer these things. On top of that,
It's not even so much what they think they are, it's what they just don't give a damn to distinguish about themselves. And so they just wish to say, I don't want to be thrown in some kind of bucket that says, this is what I am. Fuck you. You can call me by my name, but if you're going to call me by some kind of thing, like sir or lord, yeah, maybe I don't want to be called a lord. Fuck you. But I mean, if the Dalai Lama says I have to call him your holiness, does this have to, are you offended by that? He shows up here and everybody respects the Dalai Lama. Why? He has a magical third eye blindfoldy thing. I'm peeping a little. Peeping. That's not lying. It's Lama-izing.
you have animal kin. Which is
other kin, worm self, which was the one I found most amusing.
Worm self,
I guess
fox kin.
that's for the low self-esteem otherkins.
This is people that truly believe that they...
So, what percentage of reality is this connected to? I mean, really, you know, the people that want to be worm people. I mean, how many? What are? And how is this a real threat? Is there really a piece of legislation that says that somebody's wearing a worm costume and you have to sit there and say, okay, I won't discriminate. Go ahead, have a table, sit at the table. You know, go ahead, eat in my restaurant in a worm suit. I don't think that legislation's coming too soon.
Are in the wrong body, and that they should have been born some form of animal, and would like you to refer to them as this animal. Or elf.
Yes, well, again, and what would it be so horrid about that? I'm just saying, that law hasn't been passed yet, but what would be so horrible about allowing people to explore their own creativity in terms of defining who they and what they are? You had an image of yourself with a third eye in there. Should I get all creepy and say, oh, ooh, what a creepy person? Maybe we should have a death squad and get rid of the people with the think they have 3 eyes. Yeah, sure you do, fella.
Or elf, or fairy, or
fairy,
pixie.
Yeah.
Pixie kin.
I haven't seen Pixiekin. That's a good one.
But just get on Tumblr. Gotta get on Tumblr.
Right, yes, absolutely.
That's where it all goes down.
Oh yeah, all the stuff that has absolutely nothing to do with reality goes down there. It's really important. All that stuff that has nothing to do with anything real.
Professor Peterson, what the hell's going on? What is this?
This is called talk show for bullshit, okay? Just, it's the fake news. This is fake controversy, fake hysteria, fake, let's all talk about something that doesn't matter so no one will pay attention while we steal all the money. That kind of thing. It's a distraction. That's what it is. Programmed distractionism. Keep the ignorant foolishly ignorant. Yeah. Keep them worrying about stuff that just couldn't possibly matter. So all the stuff that matters just keeps on happening the way we want it.
Well, I think it's partly a form of narcissism.
Yes.
It's
Right. It's coming from people basically who understand they're freaks. Okay? And so their narcissism is they're trying to escape the label of you're freaky. And they have traditionally been labeled worse things. And so they have a inferiority complex that they're fighting for some sort of legitimacy. They just want to feel okay about being fucked up. And That's not exactly the same as narcissism. Not exactly. Well, it's probably nothing like it, actually. Professor. Professor, insecurity is exactly the kind of opposite of narcissism. Professor.
It's partly a consequence of the rise the new rise again of say Marxist doctrine. I would say it's part of
Okay, Marxist doctrine. This somehow has to do with Marx recognizing that capitalism always creates exploitation and eventually creates no gain, no capacity to take further advantage, which means like interest rates raise or something else. So it's a zero, it's a grinding system that grinds to a zero and then it can't grow anymore. Nothing can grow in it. It's like dioxin. It just heads for the dioxin pit, and once it's in there, everything dies and then you have to start over again. And so that's Marxism. Marxism is a transgender. Not even close.
postmodernism. Maybe it's postmodernism more than anything else.
Oh, postmodernism, whatever that means. Maybe it's iPhones caused transgenderism. No, maybe it's that our human role is completely disconnected from anything sensible or rational. That we're living as organisms, this silly, keep up with the Joneses, even though they're stupid cunts. You know, keep dreaming of being something nobody can be in this idiotic culture. A good person. Forget about that. You'll get killed. Yeah.
Because the postmodernists, that's a philosophical community, let's say, believe that the entire point of human categorization is power and the dialogue between people.
Okay, says you. I think that's absolute bullshit. But I mean, it's traditionally from that source. That's where it came from. Man, woman. Man owns everything. Women own nothing. Men own women. Yes, that's where it came from. So yeah, let's just get rid of those silly classifications and just say who the fuck cares what your gender is. Quite irrelevant.
People is only a power dialogue, and that there's no real reality outside of interpretation, and that basically what we do is exchange interpretive viewpoints to ratchet up our dominance and status, and that's that. And there's no biology as an ideology, and the idea of the objective world is an ideology, and science is an ideology, and it's all interpretation all the way down, like turtles.
Yes, whatever. Well, again, somebody can take it to some extremes if they want to, but that's their business, and you can critique that. But don't sit there and say, I'm going to pigeonhole everybody who sees some kind of irrelevancy in the generic sense of male-woman kind of role-playing, and say, yeah, let's get rid of that crap. Doesn't throw them in the same category as somebody says, I'm going to deny the existence of penises and vaginas. Well, no, that's stupid. Yeah, there's some differences, but the differences just don't matter anymore.
We don't.
What do you mean by it's all about power? Like, in what way?
Well,
Oh, what do you mean with power? I don't know what that is. That's a complex concept. I can't... I've turned my third eye on.
you imagine that there are groups of people who are competing in the world for resources, I suppose, and that it's a zero-sum game, and it's every group gets...
Well, that makes a lot of sense. So at least is on my side. It's a zero-sum game. Yes, just forget about it. There's no winners. You're just going to create more losers. And here you are just trying to find some people who are already losers, and you're trying to kick them. You know, you won't even give them a breadcrumb or two. You know, you won't even throw them some popcorn. You know, too much work. You know. Shit. Gee, you people are lazy.
Every other group, and the reason that we engage in dialogue isn't to establish the truth or move towards some closer approximation of reality, but to structure this social interaction so that our group comes up on top.
Right.
Right. So that's what he thinks. They're trying to take over the world and control it in, you know, call it all Transylvania, right? Turn the whole world into Transylvania. Whatever. Maybe there are some who are trying to do that. I'm just saying that, you know, I just think that a little bit of recognition of the fact that there's people who are fucked up, in the sense that, yeah, they can't make much sense out of life unless they change their life in some kind of dramatic way, or they just don't identify with the role they've been stuck into, and you can't understand that or appreciate that that's a human dilemma for some people. Well, gee, I think you're a little bit of an insensitive clod and a fool and kind of a skanky cunt.
And that is really what the problem is with all this, is that it's not just a matter of choosing to be defined in one way, but compelling others to define you in that way.
Well, there's really no point in having the definition. I mean, geez, you're going to be thrown in a category, have a label, and somehow you're having it for yourself? I don't think so. I mean, that's really the last thing I'd ever do is call myself Mister. I'm just making a concession to you idiots who sit there and have to label me. Well, if you have to label me, well, then I should be able to choose the fucking goddamn label, bastard. So can I just call you bastard instead? I just fuck your name, fuck who you are. I show you no disrespect. I just call you bastard fucktard. Joe bastard fucktard. There. Are we done now?
One of the most awful elements of it, I think, is the idea that individuals should be defined in terms of their group identity at all. I mean, you could argue, and this is one of these weird inversions.
Well, then why didn't you just say that? Let's not bother with this stupid Mr. and Mrs. thing. Let's just cut that shit off the piece of paper, and then we won't have to worry about this anymore. And we'll just have people that have names, and we won't worry about what their sexual orientation is, or what their sexual physical body is, or any of that other shit, because it really doesn't make any goddamn difference. Fuck. You just have a place for, you know, penises go to the bathroom, or a place where vaginas go to the bathroom. It's probably the right thing to do.
So characteristic of this chaotic state that we're in, when people originally started fighting against unfair discrimination, and I say unfair discrimination because lots of discrimination is fair. If you discriminate against people on the basis of their competence, that's perfectly reasonable. It's unfair discrimination that constitutes the proper...
Well, you know, then why don't you get into that whole conversation of what's fair? I mean, it's fair to discriminate against somebody who lost his leg in the war because, yeah, he doesn't have a leg and he can't carry the bricks as fast. That's fair discrimination? I'd say there's a bigger context to the subject, douchebag. I mean, fuckhead. I mean, asshole. I mean, professor.
Battleground for people who have a more egalitarian viewpoint. But the initial idea was to eliminate the proclivity for people to be categorized according to their group identity, because that was interfering with everyone's ability to view them as competent individuals.
Well, no, what it was doing is there was a clear standard that if you came out, you were going to pay a social price for it. You were going to be sanctioned and your life was going to be diminished because of who you are, and you were going to be forced to go to gay bars or something, and forced to do this and forced to do that, and forced not to interact because everybody says you have cooties or something. So there was lots of discrimination. It wasn't fake discrimination, it was fucking real discrimination, jackass. And it was done by the same pigeonholing assholes like you who said, well, every gay guy is always going to be trying to rub my ass, or he's going to be doing dirty things. You know. So you're a fucking textbook case of the very fucking evil that the whole fucking thing is a pendulum swing away from. So, and yes, it's a pendulum swing, so it goes too far. It swings the other way too much. But that's what you get when you act like an asshole. So just advocate for pushing the ball again. Just push the pendulum some more, jerk. So it can swing back and hit you in the face some more, shithead. Be stupid, professor.
But that got flipped probably in the 70s after the Soviet state so self-evidently was revealed as a catastrophe.
Self-evidently was revealed as a catastrophe. No, that's right. We paid a bunch of crazy religious kook Muslims who came back to haunt us in the ass to go ahead and fuck the Soviet Union over and make it and give them their Vietnam in a financial circumstance that made it unacceptable. And then they had a couple of leadership issues. Assholes.
Got flipped so that the world was turned into one group against another, power struggle from one group against another, and then the social justice warrior types and the lefties, even the Democratic Party, started categorizing everybody according to their ethnic or sexual or racial identity and made that the canonical element of their being. And that's not...
No, I mean, that's just a pile of crap. I mean, the liberals didn't make black people black. I mean, that's just, if they did anything, they tried to neutralize this idea that color mattered, jackass. So what a fucking piece of shit that was.
Absolutely terrible thing to do. At least in the Soviet Union when that happened, for example, when they introduced that idea along with the notion of class guilt. So, for example, when the Soviets collectivized the farms, they pretty much wiped out...
Class guilt. So there shouldn't be any guilt when people, the 1% of the population inherits ownership, like kings and lords and whatever, ownership of 70 or 80% of the resources. That shouldn't be a reason for somebody to say, gee, that smells. You don't earn it, you just inherit it. That's creepy as fuck. Whew. But he's against that. 'Cause that's the legitimate game. Those are the legitimate white people. Ooh.
Or raped and froze to death all of their competent farmers. They called them kulaks, and they attributed class guilt to them because they were successful peasants, and they defined their success as oppression and theft. They killed all of them, pretty much, shipped them off.
Right. Well, whatever. You know, blah, 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 gulags, all that kind of stuff. And there has to, you know, you're going to say that somehow you're going to be able to do it differently than that. If that's the standard. Somebody's fighting against your system. Somebody say they cheat. They don't pay their taxes. What do you do to them? They say, I don't want to play your fucking game, okay? I don't want to pay a bunch of property taxes for these other assholes having babies, and I don't want to pay to pick up their garbage, and I don't want to do all this shit. You throw them in fucking jail, jackass. Don't you? So are you tell me when you're for the law that says I don't have to pay taxes anymore to feed the rich. Because I don't want to pay taxes to feed the fucking rich. Am I going to jail if I do that? Oh, that's right, I am, jackass. So what exactly is different about the system? People who don't want to play by the rules shouldn't go to jail. Is that what you're saying, shithead? And you're a professor? Boy, you're a dumb fuck.
The Siberian frozen to death, and they were the productive agriculturalists.
Well, you say they're productive. Why? Because they had an industry and charged people more than the stuff was worth, so they made profits, okay? And so they could build themselves nice mansion houses and have hookers and all kinds of stuff. You don't make profit unless you're screwing the consumer. Hello?
Soviet Union, and then in the 1930s in the Ukraine, because of that, about 6 million Ukrainians starved to death. But the Soviets were big on collective guilt. And all of these things that you hear about now, like white privilege, for example, they're
well, look, they didn't starve to death because they killed all the good farmers. That's just idiotic. And the truth is that the Soviet Union gained, in the end. It was, very productive until Chernobyl sort of was a, thorn in that side. But they created an awful lot of valuable food production in the future. So yeah, short-term pain, long-term gain. But you're not for any of that either.
They're variants of collective guilt. I pick your bloody identity, whatever it happens to be, and then I make you a guilty member of that category, and then you and the rest.
Right. So again, nobody should find anything wrong. This whole idea, see, social justice is bad, economic justice is bad. Okay, the rich should own the fucking world. The privilege should be inherited. It shouldn't have to be earned. Oof, gross.
The guilty members of that category are judged as a unit. It's murderous pushed to its extreme, and we've seen that many, many times.
Yeah,
yes, we've seen what many, many times. We've seen millions of people die of starvation. We've seen people live in horrible conditions, endure having their arms cut off, literally, in China. No health benefits, no nothing. You're now somebody we can discriminate against because you can't work as efficiently. You're not as productive, so therefore we have legitimate reason to discriminate against you and put you in a homeless, dumpster. Fuck you.
Or your opinions rather suppressed, and you are automatically put into this category of people who should be dismissed because of.
Well, where's your opinions being? Where are you being censored, cunt? Yeah, what a gross statement, pig.
The fact that you have white privilege. You should step back and let others talk. You should step back. And this is a narrative that gets repeated over and over again in social.
Yeah, and exactly what. So white males get most of this inheritance stuff. And certainly white people get most of the inheritance, right? Blacks don't get to have any legacy wealth. There's still people right now living on plantation money. Fact. There's still Rothschilds out there living off the gold money they made back in Napoleon's day. They're still living off of that exploitation. And you think that's okay. And if a class of people say, we've been undercut, we never even got our fucking acres and our mule, we never got any kind of legacy to build on. We weren't even educated. We didn't get public school. We didn't get anything. All right, and maybe you have to listen once in a while. Well, gee, isn't that a hardship? Considering you're sitting there as the inheritance class. I mean, you got a grotesque cheat in the race, and then you're bitching, that you have to let somebody else in the race.
justice warrior culture. This idea that you should just step back and let these others talk because they understand
As
more.
long, yeah, and the others are always other group members,
Yes, right.
And somehow their discourse is to be privileged in revert.
Well, look, we know that money buys think tanks, it buys propaganda, it buys news networks, it buys populist culture. Newsflash, that's how it works. And you don't think that the underclass should have at least one cable channel run by the underclass? Just give them one.
First, because hypothetically they're a member of an oppressed class.
Right.
Of course, and you can multiply the numbers of oppressed classes ad nauseum, which is another part of the problem.
Yeah, like the idea is that in
Yeah, well, you don't think it's a problem, obviously. But yes, us people who give a damn about the welfare of human beings in general say, yeah, it is a problem that, you know, the privileged cunts like you have absolutely no appreciation for what you're living on, and at whose expense, and at what price.
in giving them privilege because they have been marginalized, you will balance things out. You will somehow or another reverse the scale.
And that's another example.
Well, the idea of social justice isn't necessarily to balance. It's just to sit there and acknowledge when something's broken and say it needs to be fixed. And you seem to be afraid of even a conversation about fixing, because you're going to label that Stalin-esque gulags. You're so afraid of the conversation. You'll sit there and slander Marx and call him, an assassinating dictator. Fucker.
Of the class-based guilt idea. It doesn't seem to me self-evident that I'm to blame for slavery, for example. I mean, being a Canadian, it's a slightly different situation, I suppose. But the idea that as a member of a culture, that you're somehow responsible for the past sins of that culture, let's say, it's a very, very anti-Western ethos.
Well, whatever that even means. It's a very, very anti-Western ethos, meaning it's completely inconsistent with our ethics where we just, we did genocide the American Indians. I mean, we killed the women and babies. We deliberately and intentionally tried to stop them from reproducing. We annihilated them. And it's inconsistent with our annihilation philosophy. Yeah, right. It should be. We should be fighting against the annihilation philosophy of the West. Yes, that's what we should fight against. Yes. That is the enemy.
Goes along with this idea of class guilt. Because you're...
Again, this class guilt, like you have no responsibility for taking the value of hundreds of thousands or millions of lives. Just consume the value of them. The sweat, the effort, the pain, the suffering. Turn it into gold, and then sit on your pile of gold that you inherit through history. And sit there and tell people there's no need for a fair fight. We earned it. They didn't. I mean, fucky you-y. Hardy till deady.
Membership is the most important thing. If your group at some point in the past did something reprehensible, which of course every group has done, that's for sure, then you are de facto responsible in the present for that.
No, you're responsible to acknowledge it as existing, as being a truth. And again, this whole, your whole defense of legacy ownership is a grotesque cheat. You don't want a fair fight. You didn't want a fair fight 200 years ago or 400 years ago, and you don't want one now. So you're just going to keep defending your legacy privilege.
How do you think we got to this point where people are repeating these patterns that were ultimately incredibly unsuccessful and dangerous?
Yes, well, and you're repeating it too, okay? So the more you keep pushing that pendulum, somebody's going to push back, like me. You're just going to turn me into a pushbacker, where I would have been on the side of saying, oh yeah, they've gone far enough, that's enough of that bullshit. You're just going to make me say, no, they're so much more honest than you are. I mean, I don't like what they're doing. They're silly and frivolous and kooky. But you're fucking goddamn evil. So yeah, I'll give the kooky people, the silly people, the AK-47s and say, yeah, go get them. Go pendulum fuck them over. Because they deserve it, these moronic idiots.
Deadly in the past, like Marxism, for example. Like, people proudly proclaim themselves as having Marxist ideology.
One in five.
Right. So Marx, Marxist ideology, which is anti-capitalist ideology. It's nothing more. Marx didn't say anything about anything else except capitalism is stupid. It's stupid exploitation, and it will never create healthy markets. It's doomed to failure because it's built on the fact of increasing exploitation. Shit. I mean, monopolies. I mean, you can go on down the list. And then when you add legacy wealth, I don't know how much Marx talked about that, but I mean, it's just insidious in the sense that you will not fail to ruin your civilization if you collect all of the resources in the hands of a very few.
Social scientist claims to be a Marxist.
How do you not understand the history? Well, why don't you fill people in on how that...
Yeah, the history of what? Karl Marx. Why don't you talk about who Karl Marx was, and how fucking smart he was, and how well he could write. But no, you'll talk about what some, dictator does, trying to take the shortcut.
Went bad.
Well, the estimates vary, but in the Soviet Union, between 1919 and 1959, somewhere between 30 and 50 million people were killed in internal...
Right, okay, so they're going to blame 50 million people on Marxism, on socialism, on communism, which isn't Marxism, right? Communism is not Marxism. And we dropped the bomb. Who'd the Soviets drop a nuclear bomb on? Oh, that's right, nobody.
Oppression alone. So that's pretty bad. And then in China, which was operating under exactly the same principles, it might be not.
Right, exactly the same principles. They may not have ever read Marx, but yes, it's okay. We're just going to call it the same thing anyway. Liar.
100 million killed during Mao's time, and of course Mao was still revered in China, appallingly enough, and Vietnam and Cambodia, and wherever these ideas were implemented, Cuba, wherever these ideas were implemented, the result was absolute mayhem. And I think what happened...
Right, and it was so much better in Cuba under Batista. Batista didn't kill anybody, didn't hurt anybody, didn't squash anybody who was anti the rich owning everything. So Batista was a wonderful guy, gave everybody wonderful opportunities, didn't create a slave economy at all. Oh, wait a minute. Fuck you.
Is that the Marxist ideas are actually quite attractive if you're an intellectual, and if you're, I would say...
Oh, yeah, well, that's right. If you have a brain, you can figure out that 1% of the people owning all the wealth and wasting it on mansions and yachts is totally unproductive for a civilization. Totally.
If you're tilted towards compassion from a personality perspective, because they're based on doctrines like from each according to his ability to each according to his need.
Well, again, the idea that was ever implemented is a lie, right? So if you want to argue that failed somewhere, first you have to show where it was actually implemented, where the money didn't go to some corrupt bunch of privileged fuckers. So go ahead and show where the ideal was ever implemented, and then show how it failed. But there's no point in saying it failed, that idea failed, because that idea never was implemented in any kind of honest way, except maybe by Castro, frankly.
And the idea that you should fulfill people's needs, or that society should fulfill people's needs, is on the surface of it an attractive idea. Of course, the problem is who gets to define the needs and who gets to define the abilities, and that really is a big problem. And, well,
where has it been shown to be a big problem? Show me where they've made an effort to do that. Show me somewhere in even anything in the last 100 years of American economics, except for maybe under Roosevelt, where anybody cared to even think about that.
And then those ideas were put into practice first in the Soviet Union, and Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who wrote the New Archipelago, did a very lovely job of detailing in horrifying detail how those initial doctrines were transformed into legislation, and then how those legislation was transformed into endless genocide, essentially, and almost destroyed the world. That's not true.
Genocide how? So again, they killed the Jews in Russia. Oh, I think it was Russia who came to save the Jews in the fight against the Nazis. Strange. With the way things turn out, huh? So what a pile of crap. Genocide against what? The wealthy class? You think of yourself as a race now? You privileged fucks?
Get that. Partly with the help of Castro, who just died. The doctrines, when put into practice, into actual practice, were murderous instantaneously. Now, what happened?
How so? So why don't you explain how the doctrines say you must murder? Exactly. Go ahead. And go ahead and point out how the capitalists in control of all the fascist states in Haiti or Cuba or anywhere of these other places, anywhere else in the world. Go ahead and show me how in Saudi Arabia they're doing it right by having the FODs own everything. Go ahead and show me how that works. How that's really great for the people. Go ahead, show me.
There are always apologists for the left in the West, especially in France.
And you're an apologist for the right, so yes, we get that. That's right. I'll defend the the excesses of those who tried. And I will point out the ones who didn't try very hard. There's been plenty of them who didn't, okay? So I'm not going to defend Saddam Hussein. I'm not going to defend a lot of people in terms of, obviously, they're just, when you're building 7 palaces for yourself and you have a huge giant bank account, well, even the guy in Gaddafi in Libya, right? He talked a nice story, but yeah, he did squirrel away an awful lot of cash, which made him a bit of a scoundrel.
Among the French intellectuals, especially in the late 1960s. And then when all of the information about what was happening in the Soviet Union came flooding forward, and that culminated, say, in about 1973 when Solzhenitsyn's book was published, the French intellectuals changed their tune. Instead of agitating on the part of the working class, which allied them with murderous Marxists, they switched and started to talk about power and talk about group identity. It was like a sleight of hand. The underlying pathological philosophy remained exactly the same, but the surface nomenclature changed, and that became very attractive. And at the same time, the Soviet Union dissolved. And so one of the problems I think we have...
I didn't dissolve anywhere near the 70s, but whatever that crap was, the French have traditionally been thorns in the side of the Americans' enterprises, so that doesn't even make much sense.
Now, a perverse problem is that these Marxist ideas are very attractive to compassionate intellectuals, and we don't have good, bad examples like the Soviet Union around that everybody can point to and go, yeah, well, that sounds good, but, what about the murderous death camps and the millions of people who are suffering? We still have North Korea, but, people...
Well, again, you talk about these murderous death camps, but they weren't around, like, even from Brezhnev's time on. You can't really make that argument. All you have is, look, they're stopping people who have a great education that they got for free from the state from leaving the country. They're shooting down their balloons. They want freedom, and they can't have freedom because they want freedom to get a free education and then go to the capitalist and sell it there instead of using it in the country that paid for it. God, they're just such little thieves.
We'll treat North Korea like it's a joke instead of like it's an exemplar of a pathological system. And people have no historical memory, like my students. And that's partly because they're taught so badly in schools. They have no idea what happened in the Soviet Union. They have absolutely no idea. They know a little bit about the Second World War, maybe. And, of course, people generally know about the Holocaust. But they have no idea what happened in the Soviet Union. So they have no idea where these ideas could lead. And there's...
Yeah, I don't think you have any idea. And I don't think the blueprint is even one could follow entirely. I mean, there's so many moving parts. But, I mean, many of the ideas were perfectly sane ideas. The idea... Even Gandhi had the idea of creating cottage industry throughout all of India. He wanted everybody to have a loom and everybody to be making things and taking advantage of their time as best they could to be industrious. Those are all positive things, but he was clearly a socialist. So is that evil? Idiot?
And the universities and the high schools are so full of people who are radically left-leaning that the students are never taught any proper history. They're taught about the evils of capitalism. And I mean, it's not like any system is perfect.
Okay, so that's all he's got to say about the capitalism and the fact that we dropped the nukes and the fact that we've killed millions of babies all around the world for oil. Oh, yeah, no, that's okay.
There's a difference between imperfect and consciously murderous.
Oh, whatever. So there's something consciously murderous about this idea of recognizing that, there should be some reasonably coherent distribution of resources based on maybe somebody's skills and somebody's needs. That those two things would be the important things to measure. How disabled are they? And clearly somebody should get by their skill too. So, but there's no reason to give it all. It shouldn't be an all or nothing struggle.
I think one of the things that you just said that's very important is that it's attractive to compassionate intellectuals, people that, without really looking at what the potential for these laws...
Right, so they're intellectuals, but they're really stupid because they didn't read my book on, we got-y, you don't-y, tough shitty.
And regulations, what the negative potential for them is. The underlying inclination to lean towards that is that you care about people and that you want people to be okay. And
you're kind of treating them like they're your children.
Yes.
And I don't mean that in an entirely sarcastic manner.
Yes, well, that is a part of the problem with running a country, is that most of the people aren't well educated. And there isn't a coherent system that obliges people to, take one for the team, so to speak, in the sense that maybe they want to be a tap dancer, but oh yeah, we have enough tap dancers. What we really need is coal miners. So maybe you should be a coal miner because that's what we really need. We don't need tap dancers.
It's reasonable in some sense to treat other people like people that you love, although it's not reasonable in very many other ways, which is why you don't invite every stranger on the street to come and live with you in your house. I mean, everybody puts up boundaries, and you have to do that. But and people tend more than we...
Well, this isn't really about having people live in your house. It's about a fair opportunity to gain ownership and your entitlement in terms of what you've earned. To have a machine where you can put in and you get fair out. And we haven't created that system. Anything close to it.
You ever expected, and I've done a lot of research in this in my lab, people do tend to vote and think their temperament a lot more than anyone really realizes. And
whatever that means, their temperament. Though they vote a temperament. No, I think what people tend to vote is a myopic point of view that has everything to do with traditions and drawing these us versus them lines.
If you're kind and that's your highest virtue, then you tend to treat people like they're kin, because that's what kind means, right? It's an extension of the word kin. But that doesn't work well in larger groups. You need other principles. And so you look at something like the idea of equity, which is equality of outcome rather than equality of opportunity. On the surface of it, it seems perfectly reasonable to say, well, if every...
Well, there can't be equality of outcome without equality of opportunity. It's impossible. So as soon as you say, well, I'm going to give you an equal opportunity to inherit $1 million. Oh yeah, that doesn't work.
Resource isn't distributed absolutely equally to every group, then the system is unfair.
Well, again, who's arguing for that? I don't think any system ever argued for that, but clearly there's plenty of socialists who know that people need to have some sort of incentive economics, but the incentive doesn't have to be billions of dollars, you see. You can have pay scales. You can pay a doctor $300,000 a year, and you can pay a janitor $30,000 a year, and that's not irrational. And that certainly isn't ignoring the fact that one person earned it, quote unquote.
And on the face of it, that's a reasonable proposition, but it falls apart under minimal examination. So here's something to think about for everyone who thinks that equality of an outcome is a good idea. It's like,
well, again, we're not even close to anything like equality of opportunity or equality of earning it. So most of the wealth is held by people who never worked a day in their life. They never did a damn thing to earn it. Nothing, zero, nothing, zero, zero, zero. That's the world we exist in. Most of the resources are held by people who've never done anything to earn it. Donald Trump didn't earn the money. His daddy stole it.
Why the hell are you striving for anything then? Because the reason anyone strives to better themselves or to develop a skill or to move forward in life at all is to produce inequality. You're trying to rise above the mediocre masses every time you make an effort at anything. And so...
Well, you can argue that, yes, we're innately competitive, but many people aren't doing that to be better than them. They're just saying, I want to eat some better food, or I want to live in a better house, or I want to have a bigger yard, or I want to play golf, and I can't afford the green fees on my current salary, so I guess I have to make more money. So they could just want more money because they want to live a better life, and they're willing to invest time to have that better life. So nothing wrong with that either.
Everything that we associate positive movement forward to or positive motivation is actually an attempt to render the world more unequal. Now, you're rendering it unequal.
Oh, yeah, bullshit. So again, he's defending a system where, like I said, 90% of the wealth is held by people who didn't go to work. They never went to work, never earned it, never created the wealth, never did any of this bullshit. They're just legacy owners.
Equal in a just way. Right? Because we might say, well, if you work really hard, you deserve an unequal outcome. Well, yeah, unless you want people to stop working hard. And that was the old joke in the Soviet Union, you know. They pretend to pay us, we pretend to work. So...
and the Soviet Union did Sputnik, and it did lots of things. So I guess obviously that joke wasn't always a joke, because they did do lots of things. They did, again, win World War II, theoretically, technically, maybe, probably.
It's so thoughtless. That's the problem.
That is a big problem with the phrase income inequality. You never hear effort inequality.
AK-47, for example. I mean, you know, the best rifles are made in the Soviet Union. Irony much?
Because effort is not the same.
Well, you know, on some campuses, and this is true in California, it's now considered a form of aggression it's classified under the microaggression, to say that hard work is one of the reasons that people accumulate more value.
Okay, so this is what he thinks. This is how these people think. They think that's how the real world works. That it's all earned. That hard work gets you wealth. That the stock market is owned by all people who did a lot of hard work to earn all of that ownership. That's how they think. They think that is earned income. They think that is earned, luxury and privilege. Not even close. Big fat lie, Professor. Big fat lie.
Accumulate more property, accumulate more money. It's an aggression. It's aggressive to say that because it implies that people who are poor don't work hard. Now, see, that's another terribly fuzzy form of thinking, because there are lots of reasons for people to not have money. Many. To be poor, let's say.
Right. They don't inherit money, so they can't make more money. Yes, that's right. You can't rent stuff to the rest of the world if you're not given your pile of stuff to rent. So you can't be a really good renter if you never have the stuff you can rent. So isn't that the truth right there? If you're never a landlord, you can't make a whole bunch of money as a landlord. And that's all the stock market is. That's all this legacy wealth is. Some people get to have a guaranteed income. They get to play the game with this big giant net, safety net under their ass. And then we rag on the poor because they don't have the guts to walk the tightrope. You're really disgusting. You're just such pieces of puke.
Which is even different than not having money. Alcoholism, drug addiction, mental illness.
Right. So that's why people people aren't driven to that by the lack of opportunity they have and the lack of hope they have in their lives. They're not driven to it by that. The dead endness of their jobs. No, it's the alcoholism and the drug abuse that created the useless person from the beginning. Well, some cases, but I don't think that's most cases. It was the lack of opportunity that destroyed any reason not to be a drug addict.
Mental illness, intellectual incapacity, and lack of work. All of those things contribute.
Also environmental factors, what communities you grow up into, what you're being exposed to. People imitate their atmosphere. You're around people that are constantly in trouble with the law, and you're dealing with horrible environments. There's a lot of factors.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things...
Right, and you just ignore those and just sit there and qualify all those people as lazy or lacking initiative. Yeah, fuckers.
What's really important about having these discussions is that they break down these rigid ideologies that a lot of these kids that are going to these universities are sort of being shoved into. They're being shoved into these ideologies. You're either on the left or you're on the right, and there's very few on the right. There's no open market of ideas when it comes to discussing these things.
And this is just such a pile of shit. All the money, all the think tanks are all created, all financed by big, huge inheritance wealth legacy owners of the universe. And it's just a silly argument to say we don't have any free speech, us rich people defenders. What a crock of shit.
Compelled and enforced into certain
Jonathan Haidt he's a psychologist at the New York University Business School. He's done a really good job of documenting the dearth of ideological viewpoints, let's say political or temperamental viewpoints, because that's more accurate, in the modern university. And it's appalling because along with all this push for ethnic and sexual and racial diversity, which I think is just a mask to enforce a kind of ideological homogeneity, there's no even...
Oh, how horrible. An ideological homogeneity. Yes, like that would be a horrible thing if we became a little less diverse and had a little less tension in our lives. Oh my God, that would be just terrible. If we all lightened up a little, oh, no, that'd be terrible. Awful, awful, awful. Let's all keep to our dress codes. You pink shirter.
Understanding that ideational diversity is the only relevant value for a university. The rest of it's all predicated.
Well, the very fact that universities have succumbed or whatever, have been bent by popular culture and demand to create a bunch of coursework that has nothing to do with doing anything practical. Okay, all this artsy fartsy stuff and philosophy shit shouldn't even be in universities, frankly, in my opinion. They should be called something else. Churches. This isn't universities. These aren't university subjects anyway. So all this crap shouldn't even be a discussion. And giving substantial political voice to a bunch of, ingrandized high school students is kind of silly.
On the assumption that if you do select people because of their ethnicity or racial background or gender, that will in and of itself produce diversity of ideas, which is another really pernicious idea because it assumes that, and it's so contradictory. The left.
Well, again, that's just a false argument too. What it'll do is make people more and more comfortable with people in different roles, okay, instead of people seeing people as a threat because they only see them as criminals. Then if they see them as doctors and other things, then they'll get used to the idea. So yeah, it's a slow, hard road to change these negative conditions where 90% of one class gets to do all of these little special things, and then 90% of another class does all of these horrible things, and then it gets really easy for there to be a lot of tension between those classes.
Describes anything that's associated with the assumption that someone who's female, for example, will think in a female way. They regard that as an unreasonable prejudice. Yet they're perfectly reasonable to say that we need more women in X discipline because they will bring in female ideas. It's like, well, what the hell are female ideas? You can't have it both ways unless you're completely unless you don't care at all about coherence or consistency, and ideologues really don't, because...
Well, we're getting there, so that's the whole point. So we're not there yet. So there are a whole bunch of traditional ideas that can be tied to sex, and the truth is that the more you keep pushing that, the more it will go away. So the more you push at it, the more you fight those traditional roles and give women roles that aren't traditional, the more that they'll start talking more like asshole men, and then there'll be inequality.
They care about putting their ideology forth. But the idea that you're going to get a diversity of ideas because you have a diversity of class of people assumes that ideas and identity are the same thing. And
nobody's doing that. But the fact that there's a relationship between your life experience and what you've been, what you've had to fight for or through, and ideology is just duh.
That's an absurd proposition. In fact, that's an essentially racist proposition. Black people think differently than white people. No, some do and some don't.
Well, I guess, yes, ghetto is going to be a different experience than yachting at the country club. So if you don't think that that's going to have a huge effect on ideology, then I think you're pretty dumb for a professor.
Don't, and the overlap is substantive, and the difference between the individuals is far greater than the difference between the groups.
I think we also need to make a very clear distinction between discrimination and people that are just inclined to gravitate towards different careers and different focuses. There's a big difference between women being...
people who are going to incline to be gravitating, again, by what mechanism? So again, you're back to, what, do you think women can't do math, right? I mean, I lived next door to a woman who had a doctorate in mathematics, and it's just, what are you basing this on? Oh, that's right, nothing. It's nonsense.
Forced out of tech, and women being not as compelled to enter into tech careers as men.
Yeah, well, the tech issue is a really interesting one for a couple of reasons. I mean, one is that, of course, high tech basically developed after the playing field for men and women was more or less leveled. I mean, that happened in the 1970s. And despite that, there aren't anywhere near as many women in tech. There's far more women in caring professions, and you see that particularly in Scandinavia, where they've done everything they can to equalize the playing field. It's 20 to 1 female to male nurses and 20 to 1 male to female engineers.
Explain that if you could, the Scandinavian issue, because it's very interesting.
Right, so they're just going to keep arguing that somehow this is just some sort of thing that just, it's innate or something, and the way the brains work, and no, it's probably because of the lifestyle and the role you play. I mean, kind of obviously, what did tech turn into? Tech turned into a virtual pornosphere. Okay, so yes, of course, men are going to be more inclined to get into programming, because what is programming about? Oh yeah, let's make a video game where we shoot shit. Let's create virtual porn. And so two huge things that, yes, are by some, you could argue that have a biological origin or a biological nexus that makes it something you can say, okay, yes, men are generally speaking more visually compelled by the world, and women are looking for something a little different. But if you reverse that, and tech was about cooking efficiently, maybe there wouldn't be so many men in tech.
And what the results have been.
Yeah, well, imagine that there are two reasons that people differ. There are more than two, but just imagine for the time being that there are two. One is for environmental reasons, cultural reasons, and the other is for biological reasons. what happens if you flatten out the environmental reasons, which is what's happened in Scandinavia, is you maximize the biological differences. You don't get rid of them, you maximize them. And so what's happened in Scandinavia is that men and women are more different from a temperament and personality perspective, and also in terms of their interests. They're more different in Scandinavia than they are anywhere else in the world.
And what have they done?
Okay, I don't know what he bases that on. They're more different. What, the women all wear dresses and the men all wear pants and all the men have guns and all the women don't. I don't know. I don't know what that means exactly. It sounds like a pile of shit. So anyway, running out of time. So we'll call this segment 1. But yeah, 21 minutes. Boy, it's going to take a lot of videos to get through this shit. Maybe I'll just do it over a period of time. You know, every few days or something. I'll do a hunk. So anyway, I don't like these guys much.